Hey guys, Shadows here. Welcome back to another Gears of War 5 video. Today we are going to be discussing 3 things that the Coalition Studio needs to get right in Gears 5. With E3 2018 approaching in just a few weeks time, where fingers crossed we do get to see a teaser for the next Gears of War game from the Coalition Studio. Thinking back to Gears 4, seeing as how we've had the game now for over a year and a half, I know it's crazy, time is flying. The developers did play it pretty safe, and while Gears 5 is a title that has to go big or go home with new features and gameplay mechanics, there are a few things that weren't executed the right way in Gears 4, which of course means that the Coalition Studio needs to bounce back in the next game by getting these 3 major things right. Firstly, to begin with, we have the one thing that I am most passionate about because it just affects the game for every single player, which is a universal weapon tuning. Having a universal weapon tuning, especially in a Gears game, is beneficial to the success of the franchise going forward because of the way that Gears of War is played out, being this this pure skill based, just crazy raw intense gameplay, as the best version of Gears is when it's most balanced, and having a universal weapon tuning that has to factor both new players but also the competitive esports scene would allow for just that. The problem that Gears 4 caused releasing with 2 different weapon tunings is that it caused a huge split and divide in the community's player base itself, because your choices were limited on what game modes you would play purely because of the difference in the tunings across each of the certain game modes. This led to a ton of confusion of just frustration trying to adjust your own personal gameplay and the differences in the gameplay itself between both the core tuning and the competitive tuning balances. With esports Gears using one competitive weapon tuning and a different core weapon tuning being the majority that is played across the entire game, does limit the casuals community's interest in the competitive scene, because technically a different version of the game is being played. With there no chance for interest from the community itself, of course that would mean a limit on the growth of esports Gears, which isn't a good thing as you would expect. Having a universal weapon tuning is something that the Coalition Studio has to consider if they do want to just continue to see the Gears franchise grow and esports Gears of War just gain more attraction, as having a universal weapon tuning would allow for new players then to maybe be able to take a little bit more interest in esports Gears, as no matter your skill level from the bottom of the barrel to the top of the mountain, you're playing pretty much the exact same game, which just makes everything that happens in esports Gears a lot more relatable for everybody. Next up though, we have new content being added post-release. Within the video game industry, I have noticed recently it has changed quite a bit by moving away from season passes and paid only DLC to microtransactions that allow for a huge amount of additional new content support at either a price point or being earnable through gameplay. With multiplayer maps most likely being free once again in Gears 5, microtransactions will also too most likely return, which is fine, you know, because there is a right and a wrong way to go about implementing them into your own game. With the gear pack system introduced in Gears 4 just being this RNG base for both in-game currency and monetary purchases, meaning that there was always a pretty big chance, no matter what, that you could open up a ton of packs to either just get really excited to owning the new content or just end up left and just feeling very disappointed. It was definitely the wrong way to go about adding additional new content to the game, being a huge factor for why a lot of players actually left Gears entirely, because when you take something that is so important in this franchise to players like characters and you put them behind an RNG roll of luck, it's never going to end well, as the system doesn't allow for every person out there to get lucky unlocking the content that they do want. Recently we did have the Aaron Griffin character challenge, which saw the Coalition Studio try a new approach with adding new content to the game, and after experiencing this myself and just seeing the community's initial reaction, I do think that this is the right way for new content to get added post-release, just because having something like a character or maybe a weapon skin set unlockable via earning it during gameplay, then releasing the content at a guaranteed price point later on, would allow for everybody, no matter how much they play, the chance to choose how they want to invest themselves and their own personal time into getting the content that they choose to own. Lastly, the final thing that the Coalition Studio has to get right, we have incentives to carry on playing. Within the Gears franchise, in previous Gears games, the series was known from the original for having a lot of player incentives, from leaderboards to Onyx medals, but unfortunately in Gears 4, if you look at the game right now, there isn't really any progression based incentives to play, which is something that can't happen, as there should literally be 101 reasons for a video game to have players feel like the need and the want to jump onto the game itself pretty much every single day. I do feel like with the Gears games, the enjoyable, just fast-paced, fun, unique gameplay is already there, which is a huge milestone achieved already. All the developers have to do is just provide an insane amount of things that players can do to maybe add to their own personal to-do list, which just keeps them continuing to play as time goes on, not questioning whether or not they are getting a little bit bored with the game itself. With Gears 5, it has to release released with new content being earnable through gameplay to a certain extent, leaderboards making a return to add reason to stats and competing amongst the community, additional challenges like the Onyx medals that aren't required to be completed by everyone out there, but offers rewards for doing so, with daily and weekly challenges being something that needs to be implemented to compete with other games like Fortnite that is out there right now. And that would just be a great place to start, as of course I would expect, and you would probably as well, that the developers themselves maybe would come up with a lot more interesting ideas that could be added to the mix of starting of incentives to carry on playing. The most important aspect of a successful video game after release is keeping hold onto as many people as possible, allowing for your community to thrive for years to come. And the only way that is achieved with playing the game over and over and over again is providing incentives to keep players interested and never getting to a stage that a lot of us are right now with Gears 4, feeling like there isn't any particular reason to carry on playing except for the enjoyment you have for the game itself, and that can only last for so long without losing that initial excitement that was there originally when the game did first release. Please make sure to leave me a comment down below telling me what you think. What is your opinion on what the Coalition Studio needs to make sure that they get right going from Gears 4 to the next Gears game? And also, if you do agree with what I mentioned in this video. So there you have it, guys, my full opinion on the 3 most important things that the Coalition Studio has to get right for the next game being Gears of War 5. Give the video a thumbs up and share if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you aren't already. Thanks for watching, and as always, I shall see you in the next one.